Welcome back, students. Till last lecture, we have understood about the 5 improvements that can be made on your basic waterfall model. These are all the conventions, or these are all the projections provided by Mr. Royce on his paper. But in practice, what actually happens with your software development is what we are going to understand in your next lecture, in this particular lecture here. Fine. In practice, this is what happens: protracted delay of integration. So if you make use of your conventional waterfall model, as we have already observed that the testing is done at the end phase. So this might result in increasing the risk of your software. Increasing the risk of your software indicates like whenever you are testing your complete set or complete module as a single test phase, so the chances to error prone of your software could be more, or the chances of your error prone in your software are more, and it is very risky. So that is the problem. That is what your delayed integration is. So whenever you are trying to integrate, say at this particular point you have only identified your requirements, and then you have identified, you have started with your, you have begun with your design, and then you started with your code. So unless and until this particular point you have not identified what are the necessary analysis that are supposed to be done. So on original target data, whenever you are trying to integrate your software, you might come across your errors here at this particular integration phase. So recovering these particular errors and removing these errors at the next process could be a risky process. So this is what actually happens in practice when you go with your traditional waterfall model. So this may end up with more errors in your program. So this is what I have already said. So initially your your requirements are started here. So at requirements phase, your risk exploration period was very high. So if you try to identify your risk related to your requirements at this particular point, what is the risk, you can be identified very easily. After that, if your design begins, then your risk could be less comparatively, and you can start with your integration focus here. So here this particular integration is going to focus mostly on your the time taken in identifying your risk and recovering them. Then you can control your risk by using your testing phase. But when you go with your previous lifecycle model, so what actually happened here is all your risk is taken only at this integration phase, and recovering that particular integration is a problem. So this can be overcome by using your by identifying your risk, or by identifying your risk at each and every phase of your life cycle model, thereby reducing the total risk of your software. Right. So second is late risk resolution. As already said, your life cycle model, waterfall life cycle model, is not going to identify your risk at the early stages. It is only going to identify your risk at the end of your project development, or very late it is going to identify your risk that are emerging in your software. So that is your second problem. Third is your requirements. It is purely related to requirements driven functional development. So here your software that you are going to develop is purely requirement driven software. So whenever you are trying to provide a precise requirement definition, so it is like your software solution can be implemented on only the exact part at which your risk could be identified, right? So this requirement driven functional decomposition will help you in identifying at which particular part there is a chance of identifying your risk more, or there is a chance of proning your risk to more errors, and you can overcome them if your risk identification is made at the early stages. And fourth part is adversarial stakeholder relationships. So here the contractor is going to prepare a draft here. So this particular draft is going to be like a deliverable document. So this document consists of a certain set of conditions, like what could be the end product the contractor is going to do, and at which phase, at which particular time, or in which period, what could be the deliverable content of that particular contract, right? So this should be the contractor is supposed to take the create this particular contract and take the commitment from the stakeholder, related to that particular project. So who are the basic stakeholders who are going to sign this particular contract created by the contractor are these are the list of stakeholders. So the contractor responsibility is to create a contract from the in between the programmer and the customer who is going to use that particular product. So the basic stakeholders are listed here. First stakeholder is the project sponsor or the project team can be taken as your first stakeholder. Next, all the supporting staff that are involved in your project development. They are also the stakeholders of your contract. Customers who are going to use your software, or the customer who has given you business in order to design that particular software, he can be taken as your customer. He is also your stakeholder. At the same time, users, suppliers and opponents of that particular project are also the different stakeholders. So what is the use of this opponents of the to that particular project is this contract is making sure to confirm that the project is being developed by team called as X and it is not going to be done by a team called as Y. So this Y team can be taken as your opponent project team or opponent project company also. So these are the various stakeholders that are available in practice related to your in practice model. Fourth step and fifth, your focus is on documents and review meetings. So your traditional waterfall model majorly focuses on your documents and traditional meetings. So here this conventional model, it is going to replicate your data in the form of documentation. Say tons and tons of information is provided in the form of documentation, but still it is not going to produce the required results. So that should not be the case. Frequent review meetings are also not conducted in your traditional waterfall model. So this can be overcome by using frequent review meetings and documenting only at the instance at which the documentation is required. So that will help you in focusing on the important documents related to your project. Right. So this in practice, your waterfall model is we have already seen. In traditional model, we have looked into your waterfall model where we have already said that after the ending of your first phase, your next phase starts with, and your testing phase comes only at the end of your project design is done. But in practice, the same waterfall model can be iterated for n number of times. That is what we have already taken as an improvement to your existing model as do it twice or do it n number of times. So initially I have done with, that is your program designing was done with iteration number 1. All the phases were done, and at this particular phase, if after completing your iteration number 1, say your project has come up with certain errors, or your project has come up with new requirements, then in that case your iteration 2 will help you in simulating the same process from step number 1 to step number n. So this can be repeated for n number of times. So what is this iterative development model going to do is it will help you out in identifying the risk at the earliest stage. So earliest stage indicates like after your first iteration you have come across your errors. So you can identify what are the possible errors in your iteration 1 and what could be the reason for this possible errors, and you can overcome all those in your next iteration, thereby enhancing the performance of your system. So each and every iteration is going to produce your executable release. Executable release indicates it is going to produce your results or it is going to produce your software as a functional software. And third, every iteration is going to be taken, or it is going to have its own integration phase and testing phase. So integration phase is like if some modules of your phase 1 are supposed to be added to your phase 2, then you can integrate both of them and you can start testing on both of these phases simultaneously, right? So this is how iterative development works in practice related to your software development. So in practice, your iterative development is going to provide you better results. So better progress profile can be provided by using your iterative software development. So this is a simple projection related to your practices that are followed. So here in this you can find this. So your waterfall model, it actually starts its procedure from your architecture, that is your designing part, and at your functional releases, it is going to start identifying the errors. Functional releases indicates when you start coding and integrating them and start testing. At that particular point only you can identify what are the possible errors you have. And after this, whenever your product is released, your customer may end up with certain set of errors after it is deployed on his system, and you are supposed to waterfall model is supposed to address them from the very scratch. So this is the basic waterfall project profile. But when you go with this iterative or modern project profile is the iterative model what we have done, right? So it is going to analyze your risk. You can identify here your risk analysis is done at each and every phase. So here your risk is identified. At each and every phase your risk is identified. So, and at each and every phase you can make your improvements related to your software release or related to your software development, and you can release your project by developing your software on the go. So this is going to enhance the performance of your process along with reducing the risk estimations in your project, right? So we'll see the same by using another projectile here. So these are the basic steps or the milestones that are taken in your iterative development process. First is your inception phase, second is your elaboration phase, construction phase, and transition phase. So these particular phases are time based. So at each and every phase, after the completion, at each and every phase, you are going to fix on with a milestone. Milestone is nothing but it is a checkpoint which is used to identify whether you have completed your given functionality related to this particular inspection in a specified time or not, right? So in this inspection phase, you are going to make an agreement related to the overall scope of your project. And when you go with this elaboration phase, this elaboration is purely dependent on the design part of your project. So your elaboration phase is going to make an agreement related to how your designing of your project is supposed to look like. So you are going to design the basic architecture of your project and define all the requirements in detail. What are the necessary requirements that are related to your design are necessary? All those are detailed here. But it is not going to describe about detailed architecture of your project. Next, when you go with this construction, so construction states that you are going to start with your project development at this particular phase. So here, what is the difference between your elaboration to your construction phase is, so when you go with this elaboration, you are going to create, identify how many classes are there, how many interfaces are required, how to integrate them, all those are described under this elaboration. But actual development of your project starts with your construction phase. So this is the application phase where you are going to work with your project, and after your programs are written, you go with testing these particular modules on each and every unit. And last, you go with your transition phase. So transition is you validate your solutions. So I am done with, like, you have developed your program here, you perform your unit testing, and you check whether it is acting as per your requirement or not. So you are going to validate the complete software or your unit. This validation is based on the stakeholders' acceptance, right? So this is the iterative process and the different models related to your iterative process. And this is a time base, keep this in mind, right? So in practice, the risk related to your iterative process is less when compared to your waterfall model, right? So this is all about your risk estimation. And related to this particular industry software metrics, Mr. Barry Boems has given you a set of 10 metrics. You can look around these particular metrics in your PDF. Thank you. That is all for this particular lecture.